Everyone, welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting of Tuesday, March 28th. I'm calling the meeting to order at 6 o'clock. Under public discussion, is there any comment or public discussion? Mr. Smith? And Mr. Grossman? Good. Just state your name, please.
Well, there's a couple things.
My name's Christopher.
Oh, I'm sorry,
That's
Chris
right.
Smith, Larry Grossman.
Thank you.
As the redevelopment authority, we just wonder, is there a timeline for the deed signing or anything more on the center school? Do you know anything about the timeline?
The timeline is still supposed to be by the end of next week, in the end of March. We haven't heard anything that there's any sort of a delay or any postponement regarding that.
Is there a draft of a quitclaim deed or anything?
Excuse me. I'm
Have
sorry.
you seen a draft of a quitclaim deed or anything?
No. No.
So,
To be perfectly honest, last I knew, the attorneys were still,
okay.
swapping information and emails, but I haven't been directly privy to any of those.
That's good, but you haven't heard anything negative
No,
either?
not at all.
No. But
Nothing
it's
negative
just-
at all. It's
The normal.
it appears to be the normal process, which is just very time consuming.
Okay,
Certainly nothing on the town's end that is
Holding.
holding anything up. I don't think anything's really being held up. It just hasn't been finalized yet.
Okay, that's good.
Okay.
and then we also had a concern about, and maybe you want to talk about this when you have item one, phase two. But kind of two areas. One is the process, and then the second is even the need for it. But the process is, we were surprised to see on the agenda that tonight you were going to select a finalist or a group of finalists from the RFQ, the request for a quotation. But we've been following this issue, and we've never seen any public meeting of the RFQ being reviewed or approved by the Selectmen. And we were surprised to find that it was posted on the Central Register like March 8th, the day after we all met with the Finance Committee, and there was even a discussion about maybe the viability of a phase two or the need for it based on what Council on Aging may or may not do down the road. And I think everyone was receptive that we're going to study that. We're going to look at this building and how it might be programmed. In fact, Mike Cahill even said that he had already approached the Council on Aging to do kind of a study of their program needs and how that might fit into this building, Holy Trinity Church, or even a new structure. And yet, the RFQ got posted on the Central Register, and I don't see the process. There was never a draft. It wasn't in public. So it was surprising to hear that not only is it published, but tonight you're talking about selecting finalists.
So on February, I think it was our February 15th or 16th meeting, I don't know. In the middle of February is when we, the board, had that conversation. We'd received information regarding the RFQ, regarding the process. We received information, I believe, from the IG's office as far as which chapter to use, as far as we submitted or put out in the Central Register for the RFQ. So the conversation, the Board of Selectmen had it. As far as the downstairs, I agree with everything you just said, Larry, as far as we are waiting to find out if there's going to be need changes, requirements, what have you, for the Council on Aging. We are still waiting to get I don't know, final's the right word, but sort of a firm or an up-to-date list of what they feel are their requirements. Having said that, we still are under the original Access Board dateline and timeline to move forward with phase two, which doesn't mean, by the way, that there won't be potential changes to that phase two. But rather than wait to see if something's going to change in this building, we know we've got to move forward with the fire suppression and other items that were addressed in that. So that's what we're doing. We're moving forward with that, and if changes come, changes changes come.
And I think we're talking two different subjects, because one subject is making the building handicap accessible and fire protection. And then the other subjects are the spaces up and down. I mean, I did a little research on this. I've spent a little bit of time to try to understand where we're at with this. And from the architectural board, basically, I just want to highlight a few things that I've come across is it appears that there was a project here and the offices got put in at that time. That the cost of that was like $494,000, and the building at that time was valued at $71.5. And they said under CMR 521 3.3.2 that if anything's over more than 30% of the value, then the whole building has to be up to code. And I believe what I've been reading is the town went back to Boston and said, we can't afford to do all this work to bring it up to code. So the state then said, we'll give you a variance on some of the stuff. And what they actually wrote was, upon reviewing the documentation, the board is voted to grant a time variance for 5 years to September 1st, 2018 for the lack of an interior accessible route, vertical access between all floors, therefore requiring that a fully compliant elevator shall be installed by September 1st, 2018. And then I believe it went to town meeting to say, hey, we need to get the building handicap accessible. And what we're acting on is what the town voted for, which was to put in the fire suppression,
Elevator.
yeah, the fire suppression, the ramp, and whatever else was required under the listing from the Architectural Access Board on what had to be handicap accessible. Then the town also said, because everybody's parking in the back, we want to make that accessible because all your handicap parking's back here. So they wanted to put in a ramp. That was designed because over here is fire, has to be an access for the fire trucks and stuff. So what we're acting on is what the town directed us to do. So that's what this is about. It's not about what we're going to do with the basement, what we're going to do upstairs right now. This is just being compliant, code compliant with the requirements.
So it's not the scope of what we used to know as Phase 2. That included the elevator, the enhanced power supply downstairs, the reconfiguration of the basement and all that, right?
Well, I think Ed touched upon it exactly.
I mean, I'll say, it says, the town hall plans to do the following: basement, first, second floor, including areas for purpose of meeting code compliant handicap accessibility, exterior ramp and internal elevator, electrical service upgrades, and a new fire suppression system. And the project may include, I think it says something about the configuration to the floors to accommodate a new elevator.
May accommodate, so.
Well,
To the floors.
To accommodate, because as I just
Elevator.
read, it's a directive from Boston that we have to put one in according to this report that we read. That's why.
No, we know, yeah.
I think the bottom line is this is not new news, this is old news. And this is about having town hall comply with all the regulations. Whether the Council on Aging is downstairs or not isn't part of this conversation for Phase 2. The elevator's going in, the ramp's going in, the fire suppression is going in. Those are the big ticket items for the 3 floors. Part of what we were doing under Phase 2 was to accommodate if the COA is ultimately remaining, to work within the space with the Council on Aging and try to mitigate the changes in the design down there. So they are 2 different things.
Okay, so let's exclude programmatic uses, the Council on Aging. Then we're talking about a 3.5-year-old discussion with the Handicap Access Board that a single selectman had, and At that time, the
Okay,
building.
excuse me, there was a full Board of Selectmen. I don't know who had the conversation, it was before our time, but
Also-
the votes were, there were 3 selectmen on the board, not 1.
And according to this, everything has to be met by,
18 months from now.
right,
28, yeah, September of
And-
2018.
I guess one alternative would be,
And we're trying to, in the spirit of letting the public have a conversation and have a little bit of back and forth, this is not an agenda item for you guys to come in and discuss. So I guess I'm trying to say in a nice way, why don't you make the point? I think we answered your question, and then we'll get on with the meeting. We're not going to keep deliberating this. This was supposed to be under the public forum portion of the meeting.
right, well, we didn't know if we could talk on, previous.
And I'm
selectmen
trying,
wouldn't let us
Chris
talk.
asked a few meetings ago, we're trying to accommodate, but this is not an agenda item. We've got some other things as well. So if you.
Right, it is Agenda 1 though, but. we
It
don't
is,
have
but
to-
we're not talking to that. We're talking about public forum.
But I guess in a general sense, maybe I or we could ask the selectmen to look at maybe different things have changed in 3.5 years.
well, the town has already voted and told us what we're supposed to do. So, I mean, I can't say, hey, the town voted this way, I'm not gonna do it.
The town voted to knock down the center school. Things changed.
Things change.
And
And
we,
then they voted not to knock down the center
right,
school.
so we could bring an article to town meeting to put a hold on phase 2. And I guess my concern is, which maybe we'll have to do that if you want to hear from the town, but then we ask.
What we want to do is.
Protect
do-
this building and bring
Do
it
what
up
we
to
were
code
told or
compliant.
was agreed to do.
But maybe.
want
we
to
If the
could
town
ask-
wants it or not, doesn't mean the access board is going to say, oh, just because town meeting said to put it on hold, we're letting you off the hook.
But they might,
Well,
especially.
They might.
They may delay.
But maybe, is it reasonable to say to the selectmen then, you could review the bids, the quotations, but don't award anything until after, give it a month. We've
Nothing is
waited.
going to happen before town meeting as far as awarding the bids.
Okay, well, that's.
That
good.
was never going to
That's
happen.
good to know, because then we might bring action at town meeting to reevaluate phase 2, reevaluate the use of town hall, this kind of money, over $2 million project in this
Well,
building.
I do want you to consider the protection of this building. I mean, this is a historic building, and having fire protection, I don't see as a bad thing.
We're
We
not
would argue with.
And bringing the
nobody would
building
argue
up
with
to
that.
code compliant, I don't see as a bad thing. And also, I mean, I know we have a difference on the elevator, but every public building I've been into has an elevator for people with mobility. I mean, I watch people from here with their walkers and stuff have to come all the way around. And if you have a mobility issue, it is an issue. So, I mean, I want you to take that in consideration. It's what we're going to leave our next generation down the road. We want to ensure that this building is code compliant. We want to ensure that this building is protected. Because
It's reasonable.
the cost of what it would to replace this building would be
It
astronomical.
just may change, though, if the third floor doesn't exist as a public space, maybe that would change the discussion. And maybe the elevator should be near the parking lot, not here in the, which is a difficult area because it
have
goes
that
into a
overlap.
balcony.
I mean, that's your prerogative, but right now, we have to follow what
Understood.
the town meeting told us to do. And if we didn't, we'd be wrong not to.
Right.
I mean, if you want to make changes down the road, you can present whatever, but right now, we're following a timeline based on what we were told by the architectural board and what was left with us, so.
It's still 18 months.
Yeah.
So-
So final thought, just again, what I stated in the email I sent to both of you. The process that causes confusion is when it isn't more transparent. I feel very much more reassured, Brian, that you're not taking any definitive action right away. Okay, that's good. This gives us time to have the conversation about what's going from this point into the future. We can't go backwards.
Yeah, that's absolutely right, we can't.
Okay. So we'll have that conversation. We'll, let's let you have your meeting. But you know and I know that RFPs and RFQs usually require a public process, which incurs a vote by the selectmen, and we don't see that part. And perhaps if I could stand corrected, if you're saying on the 15th that was done.
It was.
Okay, it wasn't video recorded.
Chris, I can't remember what I did last week, but it was in the middle of February, we had the conversation.
Okay.
So,
So the RFQ
and everything is posted as far as what's going to be on the agenda, whether, it's
Okay.
televised or not.
The reason I say is the last time I talked with Marlene on it, she said it was still in draft form. That's all. Okay,
All right.
thank you.
Any other public discussion, public forum? Okay. Topic 1, Phase 2 of the Town Hall renovations. Excuse me. So in we did submit to the Central Register a request in early March, and they were due back earlier this week. And we received 5, and we will be narrowing that down to the 3 finalists for design, permitting, and renovations. And then we'll probably begin the interview process with those 3 finalists next week. Ed, did you have a motion, or we reviewed the RFQs? Or you want me to make it? We can just do, we'll make a motion to select the following 3 firms.
Well, I'm going to make a motion after reviewing all of these. What I did like was there's 3 of them that seem to use local contractors, and 3 of them seem to be what fits for this project. So I'm going to make a motion to recommend Architectural EO, Leon, how do you pronounce it? Leon Pernice and Roy S. Brown Architects for
As the
us to-
finalists?
As finalists, yes.
Okay. I'm going to second that motion. Under discussion, I would say that I reviewed the same 5 RFQs, and unbeknownst to me, came up with the same 3 finalists that I selected. So as Ed and I were looking at each other's notes prior to the meeting, it's unanimous. So did you have any other comments you wanted to make, Ed? Did you have any other comments you wanted to make, Ed?
No comment.
Against that? Right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay. The next topic was topic 2. We were going to discuss the draft of the warrant. Marlene's unable to be here tonight, so we'll discuss that at our next meeting next week. So we're going to postpone that portion of our topics. The next topic is the police chief selection for the town of Hatfield. As many of you are probably aware, we had an interview. We interviewed the 2 finalists last week. They were Sergeant John Delaney from the Springfield Police Department and Lieutenant Mike DeKoschek from the Hatfield Police Department. We did the interviews last week, and both candidates did an awesome job, and either candidate would certainly be a great chief for the town of Hatfield. But I just had something I wanted to read if I could. I want to start my comments off by thanking all of the candidates who applied and the screening committee for their hours of interviews and deliberations in order to bring forth to the Board of Selectmen the names of 2 finalists to be considered as police chief from an original pool of 40 applicants. As Ed and I interviewed our 2 finalists, I was very impressed not only with the resumes of each candidate, but also with the responses to our questions. There is absolutely no doubt that the backgrounds of both of them is impressive, and either could have served Hatfield well if they were selected as our police chief. After reviewing the impressive resumes of the candidates numerous times, completing our interviews, and contacting some of the references provided by the candidates, as I mentioned earlier, our town and citizenry would have been well served by either of these 2 men. Both of them have impressive backgrounds, strong relationships with other emergency personnel locally and throughout the region, and a love of their profession. But as a member of the appointing authority for this position, namely the Board of Selectmen, I must decide on just one candidate. Our two finalists, Sergeant John Delaney from the Springfield Police Department and Lieutenant Mike DeKoschik of the Hatfield Police Department, would both make a fine long-term police chief. But for me, Mike DeKoschik's passion and intimate understanding and experience with small-town departments, his local experience with Hatfield and our surrounding communities, and his in-depth working knowledge of the Hatfield Police and EMS departments is why he is my choice to become Hatfield's next full-time police chief. Thank you once again to all the candidates who applied for this important position.
I
So-
too like Mike DeKoschik as our next chief. I find him very qualified. I think he understands our town. I think he's a good fit. So I'll make a motion to appoint Mike DeKoschik as our next police chief.
Second, any further discussion?
No.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations, Mike. I will be reaching out to both candidates after our meeting. I'll contact Mike to let him know of the appointment, and we'll begin a negotiation contract, and I'll also reach out to Sergeant Delaney. I think it's only right to let him know right away before anything might hit the newspaper or social media, so.
Hey, Brian,
Yeah.
when is the effective date of the new chief?
July 1st, yep. Actually, that's it for our regular meeting. We're going to be going into executive session under Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A2, to conduct strategy sessions in preparation for negotiations with non-union personnel, or to conduct collective bargaining sessions or contract negotiations with non-union personnel, and we will not be returning to open session. So we need a roll call for that, Ed. So
Ed Jaworski says aye.
Brian Moriarty, aye. Thank you. Thanks, John.